Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to a special edition of A Sikh Perspective. I've got a very special guest today. I'm delighted to have him on the show. I want to cast our minds back to 2015 general elections when the announcements were made of the new MPs, and unfortunately what we realised is that no Sikh MP had been elected in that year. So there was a term within Parliament where we were going to have actually no Sikh MP or no Sikh representation. I think that woke the community up, it shook the community a bit, and there was a realisation that unless we become more savvy politically and push the right candidates forward, we are going to have a detrimental impact upon us. Fortunately, 2017 came along and a general election was announced, and we had a number of Sikh candidates that were put forward and standing in different constituencies for different parties. But we were fortunate to have two very strong candidates that stood in two established constituencies, Labour constituencies, and we were fortunate to have our first turbaned MP elected. So I'm delighted to welcome the Right Honourable Tanmanjeet Singh Dhesi, MP for Slough, on the show.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Pleasure to be here on KTV with you, and thank you for your kind invitation to come to your Ilford studio.
Well, again, thank you for coming and blessing us with your presence. But I want to turn the clock back to an early part of your life. One thing that I'm fascinated with is names, and I just love your name, Tanmanjeet Singh.
That's thanks to my Nana Ji, my grandfather. That is his brainchild. He wanted proper Sikh Punjabi name, and he came up with Tanmanjeet. So
you're the first Tanmanjeet I've met. You're the only Tanmanjeet I've ever met.
Very rare name, but they, as he said, if you can conquer your mind and body, Tanman to phir jagga apne aap hi jit lena. Yeah, so you got to win over your mind and body. Yeah.
Well, inspirational name, and you can see that in action as well. So it's a great name. I mean, going back into your life, I mean, you were born in Slough.
Yes.
And you grew up in
the Chalby area,
and
that's a stone's throw away from my constituency office, which is it's amazing how the world is indeed round. In that, born and raised in the area, I spent my early years there. But then when I was about 4.5, then I actually went to the Punjab. My parents wanted me to go and study there. So for about 4.5 years I was there, and that's actually what helped me to pick up the nuances of the language, Punjabi language, Sikhi culture, and also thereafter what I also picked up on was the fact that my desire to learn other languages. So that's one of the reasons I think for my internationalist outlook, as well as being able to converse in 8 different languages. So that was all down to the decision that my elders made at that young age. But then when I came back, by then, we'd moved to Gravesend, so I spent a lot of my time there. And then after studies, then I went and even worked in Bonnie, Scotland for 3 years.
Right, okay.
So I lived out there for the best part of 3 years, setting up a small construction business. And this is prior to you going to university, or this is after you coming from university? After university. So that's when I wanted to prove something to myself, that I can indeed, set up a business and try to do something outside of the comfort zone of London and the southeast. So I crossed the border, as I say, for those 3 years, at that time, by the way, it wasn't my aim in life to become a councillor or a mayor or an MP.
Right.
When I was young, I wanted to follow in my parents' footsteps, who had worked hard from renting out their first ever house in Slough to buying a car, running their own small business from our garage. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do well for myself, to set up a career, set up a business. But sometimes, as I say, the path, you don't determine your path, the path finds you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's in essence what happened with me. But even you'll see from my university days, my initial degree was in mathematics with management studies.
Yeah, so you did applied statistics initially? Or?
Yes, that was my master's. So
right,
my
okay.
Undergrad was at UCL, and that was mathematics with management studies. So I wanted, in essence, to gradually go into management. But then my master's was in applied stats. So statistics applied in medicine, industry, even linguistic family trees, and that was at Oxford. And then luckily I was able to shift from the sciences to the humanities, and that the interviews allowed me to do that, where I actually studied for my MPhil South Asian history, and it's the connections.
Big change then from
very, very big change.
Yeah,
but once again, the decision that my parents had made early on, the ability to read and write in Punjabi, read and write in Hindi, that's what actually persuaded my interviews at Cambridge to say, okay, we'll give you a chance because you've got access to primary sources. You'll be able to read those, rather than relying on translations. Yeah. And I'd always been very interested in current affairs and history, so I'd already read widely on various aspects of not only the global history, but in particular South Asian history. Right. So my MPhil, that was a year well worth spent. I researched various things, but my thesis, basically a small booklet, Punjabi Kitabcha, that was actually on the Punjabi Suba. So how leading up to partition, when India and Pakistan, were born, but thereafter how the current Punjabi Suba, the current state of the Punjab, came into being, and how language, religion, and politics intertwined to create the current boundaries.
So these are your building blocks. I mean, your foundations are grounded there anyway. Right. I mean, it's a great story to follow, and I think a lot of Sikhs will relate to that story as well, of hardworking parents and success there. I mean, but you took a different turn on it here. You decided to enter politics, and when did that then actually happen? Yeah, so because the first time I came across you were the youngest mayor of, I think one of the youngest mayors in the UK.
In Europe,
in Europe and the UK.
Sikh mayor,
so that's when I first came across across you. So how did that happen?
As I said, after the studies, I wanted to prove myself. So away I went to work. But then I'd always been a member of the Labour Party, so I've been a member for about 15 odd years. From my uni days, my grandfather was a committed socialist. He's obviously Amritari. My parents are Amritari. Into their Sikhi, but also they believed in the Labour values, because when they needed somebody, the Labour Party was there for them. So in our house, while we would debate aspects of theology, we'd also debate about politics, whether that's in Britain, whether that's in India or elsewhere around the world. So even within my family, within the extended families, whether that's in the Punjab, where there are people of different political persuasions, so people belonging to all different political parties. So when we actually have a big family get-together, there can be some very heated discussions, so we put it mildly, whether that's in the Punjab, whether that's here. But here, the Labour values were so entrenched, and that's why I'd become a member of the party. But
does it surprise, because I think Punjabis, Sikhs tend to be quite opinionated when it comes to politics, but I think it always surprised me why that further step wasn't being taken of entering politics at parliamentary level.
And that's exactly what happened with me, where I was a lay member, but then somebody approached me from within the local party, and fair play to them, it wasn't as you would expect, somebody from the Sikh community. It was actually people from the white British majority community, that they were looking for young people. They also wanted somebody, with a turban, with the star wala koi banda, that somebody's going to come forward. So when they
more than that, they probably recognised that your capability, and they probably recognised the fact that, because I think a lot of the time that young people in politics is so desirable anyway, I think.
I think, and that we was lucky that they were linking up, with other people within the communities, all the elders, and when they looked at their membership roll, they suddenly saw that I was there as well. But when I was asked in 2003 to stand for council, at that point I had to respectfully decline, because I was living and working in Scotland most of the time, and I would only come back on weekends. And so I said, well, look, I'm a paid up member. I don't want to be anything more than that. So it's at that age, you're too busy, focused on work. This politics was, as you said, that step change for most young people isn't there because, it's not going to pay the bills. Politics, especially being a councillor, it's only part-time. But when they approached me again in 2007, we had all-out elections again. And then they said, well, look, now you've moved back down south, that you should consider standing for election. We're looking for candidates. And so I stood on that occasion, and lo and behold, we won thanks to the strong support from the community. So I first became a councillor about 11 years ago. And then gradually, a couple of years after that, the local party, whatever they saw in me, they said, look, why don't you become even more active? We'd like you to stand for chair of the local Labour Party.
Okay, all right. So you were actually the chair of the party.
So being the chairman of the local Labour Party, that, by the way, takes some doing. Because,
I can imagine.
That, you got very highly strung individuals, very passionate. So several hundred members.
All the eccentrics.
But I've got to be very diplomatic. But they, when they actually vote on who they want, to be the chair, and the chair, who was more mature, he was actually stepping down, to retire, to say, well, look, it's time for a young person to take the charge. And somehow, unanimously, they came to the decision that yes, the guy's proved himself in the last couple of years. I was quite good at debating, within the chamber. So, taking the fight to the Tories within the chamber. They were actually in control, so we were in opposition.
All right, I can see.
We unfortunately lost control in 2007. It went from a Labour to a Tory council. But then, so 2009, I became chair of the party, and then in 2011, they made me the candidate for mayor, and we won the council, we won the election, and then I became, as you said, the youngest Sikh mayor in Europe. And then gradually, became a cabinet member within the council. Then we embarked upon various community initiatives, like, for example, we installed the statue of Squadron Leader Mahinder Singh Pujji,
which we've all seen,
a turban Sikh soldier, right in the heart of Gravesend, and various other things. And then I actually got the opportunity to stand for Parliament. And then, lo and behold, 2017 comes around, and the party, after a very, very competitive process for Slough, where more than 100 different people applied for it, and luckily, the National Executive Committee chose me to stand for Slough, and then I became an MP.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think I always, personally, I expected you to be standing in Gravesham. So it was a bit of a surprise when we saw you standing in Slough.
So in 2015, I did stand from Gravesham.
That's what I thought.
But the Gravesham, like with most of Kent, it just became completely Tory controlled. So you got certain heartlands. So, for example, London is more Labour, or certainly at the moment, it's a stronghold for Labour. So Kent at the time was a stronghold for Conservatives. But in 2017, when the snap general election was called by the Prime Minister, and then people applied for various seats. So I applied for the seat where all our dad's side of the family, or 90% plus, are from Slough. And my mum's side of the family, they're mostly from Gravesend. So we had a very, very strong connection with Slough, having been raised in the area, and also somebody's birthday parties, because that Khand Part, you're always there month in, month out anyway. And then so I got the chance to do this here on a national level, and I'm hoping that your KTV viewers and others, that they're proud of, as you said, the first ever turban Sikh, but hopefully they're proud of the way that I'm trying to represent people, that hopefully also it will lead to many others actively thinking about a career in politics, about public service, because we are very underrepresented as a community, and I think people need to be carefully and strongly considering a career in public service. Whether that's in media, whether that's within our local councils, because they make a huge change within our local communities, or whether that's in fact in Parliament.
Well, exactly. I mean, politics doesn't mean you have to be involved in Whitehall. I mean, you can take it at a local level, or you can be involved in many different boards and governing bodies and whatever.
Welsh Assembly. We've never had a Sikh person within the Welsh Assembly, or in the Scottish Assembly, or in the Northern Irish Assembly. So if some of your viewers are out there, and I know even in Europe, there is no representation. So hopefully, with KTV being viewed elsewhere, around the world, that many of those individuals can see that if he can do it, why can't we do it? So I think that's something that we need to actively encourage.
No, absolutely. Have you found winning at the start in Parliament? Because I know that you're noticed.
Yes.
Because I've been at some events and everyone knows you.
Yeah.
So you've obviously made your mark. But in general, what's the perception?
As I said in my maiden speech within Parliament, and I want to thank Mr. Speaker for coming back to the chamber to preside over that historic occasion, because as I said to him that day, being distinct may have its disadvantages, where in terms of discrimination, whether that's at school, in terms of bullying, or whether that's generally within life, we know that. But being distinct also has its distinct advantages.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as I said to Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that wearing these brightly coloured turbans will act as a magnet as you continually point towards a member for Slough to make his invaluable contributions to proceedings in the House.
Well, the thing is, I probably never used to watch PMQ or a lot of parliamentary debates. I certainly notice you all the time now. So
I mean, I'm that bright bug looking around.
So I'm going to home in on you, and I'm sure the general public are homing in on you as well. So on a mass scale, that's massive prachar in here. For Sikh values, for what we stand for our identity.
Definitely.
But you're carrying a lot on your shoulders.
It is a huge statement.
I mean, there's not only, the Sikh community expects so much from you. How are you taking that? Because we do always expect you to say something on the Sikh issues, and that must be a difficult thing for you to manage.
And as I said in my maiden speech, which by the way, I thank KTV and all the others, for having shown that, because to get millions of views. But I think that wasn't because of me, it was more because of the historic occasion, as you rightly said. And as I said there, I can feel that weight of expectation, that from sheer frustration, it went to excitement that finally there is somebody that looks like us sitting in Parliament. But that expectation and those that responsibility is huge. But all you can do, you can do your level best. You try to acquit yourself to the best of your potential. But as you said, whether it's Sikh issues, being a Sikh MP, to be speaking up on those Sikh issues, but also to be speaking on issues affecting the whole community. So within our Sikh ethos is Sarbat da Pala, that we should be working for the betterment of all. So I've got to be speaking up and being a strong voice for my constituents who voted me in. So 100,000 plus people in Slough are expecting that this guy that they've elected is going to speak up on their behalf, whether it's regarding schools, hospitals, the roads within, and
the railway, the infrastructure, whatever, everything. Slough is such an active and positioned logistically in such a way that it's a key borough, really.
It is. Slough, by the way, many of you might not be aware, is the most productive town or city in the entire country per capita. It's got the largest singly owned trading estate in Europe. It's the Silicon Valley of England, because it's got the second largest concentration of data centers anywhere in the world after Virginia.
Yeah, it must have.
And being so close to Heathrow as well, there is so much activity. We've got the headquarters of O2 Telefonica, headquarters of Mars, headquarters of various other national and international firms. So there is a great deal of expectation from those businesses, but also from the workforce as well.
So you are representing.
You've got to represent that.
I mean, let's obviously fast track and go forward to your recent campaign, which is the launch of the National Sikh War Memorial. And that's a great initiative, and you've got huge mass exposure on that. And I think I must think nearly every single main prominent MP has made a statement on it, has supported it. How's that all going? And
I think, look, in terms of the National Sikh War Memorial, that wasn't, by the way, it wasn't my idea. That demand has been ongoing for more than a decade, and various individuals at different points have requested or have spoken up for it. In fact, I found, searching through the archives, that in November 2000, for example, the Maharaja Dalip Singh Trust, they had their event, and even at that event, in the Imperial War Museum, various speakers, including the keynote speaker at the end, said that that's a scar on our landscape, that there is no memorial to the Sikhs. Ever since then, you've had the National Sikh Remembrance Foundation, Councillor Shukar and others. They held an event in Parliament in 2013, presided over by the previous Attorney General Dominic Grieve. They spoke in favour of remembering our forefathers and their contributions. The Anglo-Sikh Heritage Trail, I've spoken up on it on various occasions. I know that the Sikh network, and you're very active, within that as well. The Sikh Federation, the APPG for British Sikhs, they actually had that in their manifesto in 2015, actively pushing the parties. In 2015, we also had a couple of parliamentarians, Tom Brake from the Lib Dems, Vrinder Sharma from Labour, putting in motions in Parliament in favour. But for some reason, there was an impasse that we couldn't get past. I think it needed somebody to really push it, to champion the cause. But because I had that passion for a memorial because...
Well, you've been involved in the Gravesham, one of the Gravesend squadron leader one as well. Yeah.
Precisely, and because of that, and I realised, leading on that initiative, that community-led initiative in 2011, that if ever I get this chance to do seva on a national level, that is what, that gap that we will, I will definitely try to fill, that we need to get a memorial for turban Sikh soldiers. More than 80,000 turban Sikh soldiers died, more than 100,000 were injured just in the 2 world wars, let alone other theatres of war. So we needed to acknowledge that, and I wanted to work with like-minded individuals like yourself. You made an immense contribution. We've actually got the National Sikh War Memorial Trust that was set up last year for the express purpose of delivering the National Sikh War Memorial. Now that's something that I'm on record for saying, whether that's to the various Sikh organisations, and whether it was to the donors, by the way, at the launch last month in Parliament, which was historic. You attended it yourself as well. And where we had 15 generous donors pledging £25,000.
I think that took us all by surprise. That took me by surprise.
I tell you, buddy, that was some very expensive cups of tea that I had with those various individuals, or it was expensive for them. But as I pointed out to them when I was either sitting at their house or in their office or in Parliament, that this would be something historic, because in no capital of the world is there a memorial to turban Sikh soldiers. Even in Delhi, where we've got the Maharaja Tanmanjeet Singh statue, but we, to commemorate turban Sikh soldiers, unknown soldiers.
You've started something in Delhi as well, because there is now a campaign taking place in India and in Delhi as well, where people are talking, why isn't this memorial here in India? So
I read in the last week papers that now they're pushing, and hopefully people in other parts of the world. But I think we've in London, we've shown that leadership that we can do it here, and we will achieve it.
We're the catalyst, basically.
No, definitely. And look, this I think will lead to such positive benefits in terms of community integration. And by the way, when I served as Mayor of Gravesham, integration was my theme, where I said that we should all be proud of our own distinct identity, whatever that may be. If I'm a Sikh, I'm proud to be a Sikh, but at the same time, we should be proud of our shared heritage. And for those of us who are born and brought up in Britain, we should also be proud to be British. But what we need to do is to get that statue installed, because it will be wonderful for those young Sikh children, that they've got something tangible, a role model to aspire to. But for the majority community, it will that will be a symbol. It will be a living history lesson for them as to what the Sikhs contributed to the freedom of this country, the freedom of our country. Now, all we need now, buddy, is I'm already in conversations after that historic launch, wherein Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition, was there, Sajid Javid from the government minister, Mayor of London, the leaders of various political parties, including the Parliament Speaker. He attended the entire event.
Inspirational speech at the end, I must say as well. He gave something quite fiery there.
And he wouldn't attend for more than 10-15 minutes at an event. But he stayed there for the entire time. And the government have committed to helping us find a prominent location. We need that memorial to be in a fitting location along with the other memorials, because those Sikh soldiers were brethren in arms. They died together with other soldiers. They fought together, and now I think they should be memorialised together as well. But we are now relying upon the authorities, on Westminster Council, on the government, to find us that location. And
no doubt it's going to happen as well, because it's got such big political backing, and it's got you behind that.
And yourself. And we need the Sangat on board as well, because we need to raise more than £1 million. Because not only for the world-class statue, we need to spend more than £500,000 to make that a world-class statue befitting, but we need to raise past £1 million mark, because ultimately we want to give that statue and the Memorial Trust, the funds therein, to the council, to the royal parks, because they will then maintain it, insure it, clean it, etc. in perpetuity. But that is the challenge that they've set us.
And there's supposed to be there'll probably be an education program around this as well. So we've got to, it's got to go hand in hand, in terms of the memorial.
I think you've hit the right note there, because like educated individuals like yourself know, it's not just about putting a statue, it is the educational aspect, that educational pack, to gradually try to get it included within our national curriculum, so that people know about the value, the contribution of those from around the world to the freedom of our country.
I think we're going to have to leave it there now anyway. We've probably gone a little bit over time, but a passionate discussion and a passionate cause.
We're both passionate about it, and that's why I think the time just flew past.
It did indeed. But I mean, the turban is such a big part of the London landscape, and you're just proving that as well. And I think this project, the memorial and everything, will just show how embedded the turban is into the British society.
And I would request your viewers, the Sangat, to get involved in terms of any input that they would like to. Please get in touch with the National Sikh War Memorial Trust or myself. Please send emails in for your donations. We need more than £1 million, but also I would request the Sikh organisations. A lot of good work already has been done by the Sikh Council, Sikh Federation, Network of Sikh Organisations and others, that we need to pull together to realise this collective community aspiration.
Definitely. And I think this is going to bring everyone together.
Definitely.
Baisal, thank you very much for coming down to our Ilford studio. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And we hope to call you again sometime. Anyway,
I look forward to it.
Okay, so thank you very much for watching us, and we'll see you next week for another episode of A Sikh Perspective. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.